You did everything right. Killed notifications, buried email, time blocked your week into a mondrian. Quit the 60-hour-a-week job, set up your own thing on your own terms. You thought you'd freed yourself. You didn't find freedom. You just swapped one boss for 100 invisible ones. So you end the day with a headache and a sense of despair, and you start the day glimmer scrolling. That's my word for the habit of grabbing your phone and hunting for proof that you matter. The new follower, the fresh comment, the bump in open rate, the graph that twitches up and to the right. It feels like progress, but really, it's just productivity theatre. Motion for the sake of motion, endless little checks that leave you as busy and restless as before. Because the problem never was about how busy you were. It was that you'd outsourced your sense of direction. I used to run a big non-profit, $5 million a year fundraising target, quarterly board meetings, keynote speeches. My weeks were crammed with deadlines and validation. During the pandemic, the pressure spiked. I worked like crazy to keep the whole thing afloat and I burned myself out. So I left, thinking less work would fix it. But what I didn't expect was this. Without the deadlines, the meetings, the applause, I lost something else too. And that's when the glimmer scrolling crept in. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining here, I promise. I realize that it's a complete privileged position to be in. I have a life that I could have probably only dreamed of 10 years ago. I built something that akin to like a multi-potentialite dream, I guess. I get to work on whatever I want to work on, more or less. I'm a coach, I'm an advisor, I'm a writer, I'm a musician, I'm a YouTuber. I've built a life of creativity and flexibility that I could have only dreamed of 10 years ago. When I'm not working, I spend my time on the playground with my little boy or running the trails in the woods. It's a complete privilege, it's a complete dream. But despite this, despite being in complete control of my own schedule and choosing what I want to work on and more or less when, I am still constantly glimmer scrolling. I'm still trapped by the need for these small signals of validation. My happiness still depends on the opinion of other people. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called contingent self-esteem. And unless you fix it, unless you recognize it and sort it out, you will always be busy. You will always be glimmer scrolling. Contingent self-esteem is when your perceived worth and identity depends on achievements, praise, or appearance instead of being felt unconditionally. I first learned to crave those signals in rural Lincolnshire in a lower middle class family of 6 kids. If you wanted attention, you didn't sulk. You tidied the house or you ran to the shop before it closed. The good child reflex, be helpful, be adaptive, be noticed. And that script stuck. And as I grew older, I never anchored my sense of self in one particular identity or career or role. I became the one who could do a bit of everything. And as a result, my sense of self, my identity, drifted towards other people's reactions because that's where the proof lay. And so when I quit my job, when I moved country, when I took time out to parent, I lost more than structure. I lost the flow of signals that was telling me I was doing okay, that I was all right, that I was enough. And as a result, those old habits that kept me afloat in the old system, well, they've started to reappear. They've started to kind of emerge. And I find myself over-investing time and attention in areas that don't really matter, like the YouTube content dashboard. I treat every bit of feedback like a kind of referendum on my worth, whether it's a comment, whether it's a like, whether it's the analytics on the latest video. And I start to avoid work where I might fail, the kind of work that is difficult, like making YouTube videos or creative writing. And I start spending time in stuff like optimizing email flows or checking in on analytic dashboards, stuff that feels like work, but is really just safe, busy work. And as I invest more time in this safe, busy work, as I do this, as I cling to my glimmer scrolling, I start to feel like my hard-earned freedom is more of a cage. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin describes 2 kinds of freedom. The first is negative freedom, freedom from interference. I got the negative kind the moment I quit my job. No board meetings, no funders to impress, no ladder to climb. But without a purpose I'd chosen for myself, freedom felt like drift. It was paralysis dressed up as potential. The second freedom is positive freedom, freedom to act with purpose. At first I thought the fix was just to slow down, but the real shift isn't only about doing less, it's about how you judge the value of what you do. And that's where positive freedom comes in, recognizing and using my freedom to act with purpose. It seems kind of ridiculous to discover this at the age of 43, but I'm still learning that if your self-worth is tied to other people's approval, the only solution is to change the way you decide what's worth doing. Those studies I mentioned earlier found that one of the most effective ways to reduce the pull of contingent self-esteem is to shift the basis on which you judge your own actions. That shift looks a bit like this. Firstly, shifting from proving to learning. For me, that's studying through making. So treating YouTube as an apprenticeship rather than a job, and every video as an experiment, not a verdict on my talent. Secondly, shifting from performing to participating. I interpret that as service over scale. For example, writing my newsletter for the handful of readers who actually write back, not the silent thousands. Thirdly, shifting from being seen to seeing yourself. For me, that starts with being intentional with my focus. I'm trying to create the space to be more creative, independent of the people who may end up sustaining that creativity. This is the first time, perhaps ever, I'm trying to lead a life that isn't powered by other people's approval. It's not easy, especially if you're creating films, music, or writing, any activity that necessarily requires an audience. But I'm learning, slowly, that not all that glimmers is gold.